Welcome to Seesaw in the Summer. Thanks so much for being flexible, everybody. This is a great opportunity to just kind of walk through what you can do in Seesaw over the course of the summer so that you can feel ready to go in this new school year, and whatever that looks like, whether we're in person, remote, in person with masks, what have you. So what I've done so far is logged in, and I signed up with my NETA account because it's never used a Seesaw account before. And when you first log in, if you don't have an account created for you, this is the screen you're going to see. If you do have an account created for you, whether that be through Seesaw for Schools, or let's say you've purchased an account individually, you will not see this. You will see your regular dashboard. If you do have Seesaw for Schools, or you have purchased the individual Seesaw account, some of these things are going to look a little different for you. You're going to have a little bit more bells and whistles available to you. For right now, I just want to show everybody who has the basic version, the free version, what they can be doing over the summer. And if you happen to have a little bit more of an upgrade than anyone else, that's great. Just go ahead and follow along and make best use of what you got when you see it. So no matter what you are logging in with, you can create a class. So whether you open up you log in and you open up and create a class from your dashboard, or you are logging in for the first time and you sign up with Google and this is what you see, you will be able to start here. If you are working during the summer and you are a Seesaw for Schools group that has archived, or district that has archived your classes, you will need to do this step. So don't be afraid. You're not going to be making any kind of problems later on down the line. Just go ahead and name it test. So I'm just going to call it test so that I know that this is just a play class. This is nothing that I'm going to be using, but it is something that I can play around in and maybe make mistakes in and not have to worry about making mistakes with my actual students. Choose whatever grade level you like. There's really no problem choosing one versus the other. I usually tend to stick with 3rd grade just because it's kind of right in the middle. This import from Google Classroom is great if you are an individual, if you've paid for an individual account. Otherwise, it's not really all that useful. So I'm going to click on the check mark to create the class. And then as you can see, it's kind of taking me straight to my dashboard, which is really nice. So in my dashboard, I can do multiple things. There's a lot of things that we can do from here, but I want to start with the basics. So the very first thing you're going to see is the add button, this big green button, and the kiddos are going to see that too. So what you're going to want to do is come down here to add students. So before we start adding documents, before we start adding anything to play around with, we want to add some pretend students. So I'm going to come down here to this add students button, and it's going to say, do you want students to sign into Seesaw using their Google account or email address? And because this is a play, this is just something fun that we are goofing around with, I'm going to say no. And I'm going to say shared devices. And what that's going to bring me to is a list that I can start typing in. So I'm going to say, I've got an Abby. Let's say I've got an Aiden. I want a Susie. Let's do a Megan. Let's get some more boys' names in there. Bobby and David. We'll just stop there. We can always add more later, and you can also paste a list in there as you are remembering kiddos or as you think of other names. So I'm going to click my check mark. And now if this were a real class, you would want to print this off. This would be your student poster in your classroom. But this QR code only works for my test class. So even if I did use my real students, I wouldn't want to put this QR code up in my classroom because it's not going to go to the right class. So at this point, I'm just going to close that. I don't need to do anything with it right now. If it were my real class, I would want to print it off and post it. But for right now, there's no use in using it. So if you look over here now, I have all of these names in my class. So there is a sample student that we can kind of play around with later, but here are my names of my students. And wouldn't it be nice if I had, 7 or 8 students in my class all the year? That'd be wonderful. So the other thing you might be seeing over here is the Add Families button. And that is definitely one of the stronger points of Seesaw. So that's one of the reasons that a lot of people choose Seesaw over any other portfolio sharing or journal sharing device, because it does connect so nicely with families. So let me show you what that looks like. So you do have to, as the teacher, turn on family access. This is one of the things where if you are in a Seesaw for Schools district, that might be turned on for you. So you might not see this particular pop-up. But if you are not in a Seesaw for Schools district, you're going to want to turn on family access individually. So we're going to click on that. It doesn't do anything except for give you the access to invite family members. And so there's several options over here. So I'm going to kind of show you the different options and talk you through them a little bit. You can invite families by email or mobile number or cell phone number. What that's going to do is if you put in the family's individual email or individual phone number, it's going to send them a text or an email to that number or that email, and it's going to invite them to join Seesaw. It's going to send them an invite to your class and to that particular student. So you can do that for each and every student if you would like to. Or the thing that I often have my teachers do is I will have them print off invites so that at conferences in the fall, especially for conferences, when you have parents come in, you can hand them that printed invite that has a QR code right there for them. All they have to do is scan it with a smartphone or a tablet, or punch in the code on their computer when they get home, and they are connected. And the reason you're going to want to get families connected is because they can then see every time their student posts, they can see messages from you as their teacher. They can comment and like on the student posts. There's just a lot more of a connection with that school to home with a connected family member. The other option, and this is not my favorite, but you can share an invite link. So let's say that you are working, maybe you're the music teacher and you are working with 600 plus students. You probably don't want to come in here and type in an email address or a phone number for all 600 plus students. Now, you probably wouldn't have them all in the same class, but still, that's a lot of typing. So what you could do is you could share an invite link. And what that does is it gives you a copy of the link that the parent could click on. So you would copy the link, paste it into an email, send out that email to your group, the group of parents you've created or what have you. You could email it to your classroom teacher and ask them to forward it home. However you want to communicate that link out to the parents. And then when they get on, they select their student from the list and they are connected that way. The only reason I don't like that one for normal use is that there is always the chance that a parent chooses the wrong kiddo, especially with, as you can see, we have 2 frogs. So if the kiddo tells them, just look for the frog, well, they could be Aiden's parents or they could be Bobby's parents. And either way, they're going to be seeing the wrong student. So I'm not a fan of that one, but if that's the only way to get parents connected, then absolutely, that is a great way to go. So just to review, you can go in individually and put in email or cell phone numbers for each student. You can print off invites that are also individualized to each student. So each student's family will get their own QR code, no having to choose. Or you can share an invite link with all of your parents, and when they accept the invite, they are prompted to choose which student is theirs. So that is really a really nice feature of Seesaw, that it's really private to the parents and that student. Nobody else is going to see, no other parents are going to see that student's work unless they're tagged in it. So just to review, we created our class, we called it test, we added students, and we added families. But let's say that you have more than one class. So you've got your test class here, but it's becoming, it's August now, and you've created your actual classroom, but every time you log in, you're stuck in your test class. The way to get out of that is to come over here to your name and click. And you will see all of your classes listed over here. So no matter how many classes you are a teacher in, you will see them all listed right here, and you can toggle between them really, really easily. You can also create a new class over here, and this is also where you log out from. So if you are somebody who doesn't like to leave your Seesaw logged in as you're leaving, this gear right here is very, very helpful because that's where you sign out from. So again, to get there, all I did was scroll over to my icon, click on it, and then I've got my gear right next to my name, my create class right here, and then my list of classes. And right now you're only seeing one because that's all this account has. I will draw your attention before I leave this area to this help. It is phenomenally done. It is a wonderful help center. And right now they're a little inundated with getting things ready for fall and getting things caught up from spring. But if you have any questions, I can almost guarantee you the answer is going to be in here somewhere. So that help feature is definitely worth checking out if you're getting lost. There's videos in there, there are tutorials, they will walk you through step by step. So to get back to my dashboard, and this is kind of my landing page, there is a wrench up here in the top right-hand corner that I want to draw your attention to. So when I click on this wrench, these are my class settings. So this is kind of the moment for a lot of my teachers as I'm working with them, because this is an area where a lot of teachers are looking for how to change things. So they're looking, how do I change the class name? I wrote it wrong. How do I change my grade level? I clicked on the wrong one, or I switched grade levels, or I looped with my kids this year. How do I change that? This wrench is where you go to do all of that. If you are like me and you are very picky about color, you can come in here and change your class themes very easily. You can come in here and change your class icon. So if I was teaching music, I might want to make my class icon a musical instrument so that as my students are looking for my class in their own list of classes, they can find it easier. I can come down here. So that's kind of all the general class settings. I can add other teachers. So if I wanted to add another teacher, with the free version, unfortunately, you can only have 2 per class. With the paid version or Seesaw for Schools, I believe it's up to 10 per class. So it's a little bit more open at that point. But if I did want to add somebody, all I would do is type in their email address, click on the invite, and it would send them an email. They could accept the email or accept the invite and join as a teacher. So then I can come down here into my student settings. And let's say that when I was creating my class or inviting my students, I chose the wrong thing. This is where I can go to come in and change it. Or let's say I was using shared devices, but now this year we're using one-to-one devices. This is where I can go in and change it. When I come back in here to manage students, I go scroll back down to my student settings and I come down here to manage students. I can click on that. This is where, let's say, Aiden and Bobby cannot figure out who is who. So what I can do is I can go into Aiden's student profile and I can click on icon and I can say, hey, Aiden, come on over here. Let's choose a different one. Oh, you like camels. Okay, you can be a camel. I would suggest if you've got a lot of girls in your class to don't show them this one because they will all want that one. Just saying. And when I come back, his icon has changed and I can go back in and, oh, now nobody is the same. So now Aiden has his camel, Bobby can be his frog, and everybody's a happy camper. That would also be, if you wanted to do photos, that would also be where you would do so, would be to use photos. So when I click on use photo, it'll pull up whatever camera is attached to my computer and I can take a snapshot or upload a photo of that student. So that's a possibility as well. And again, some of these settings, if you have Seesaw for Schools, may not be in your control. So you may be grayed out or locked out just because that's something that the Seesaw for Schools administrators do control. So just real quick, if I come in here, I can edit first name, I can edit last name, icon, display name. Sometimes kiddos have a nickname that they would prefer to be called. Emails, family members. The home learning student code is something we can talk about later. That's been really helpful as we've been remote learning, but we can talk about that in a little bit. This is also where you would remove a student from your class. So if you were ever if a student moves or leaves your classroom, that is where you would go, is to manage students and then click on that particular student. This is also where you can add some more students. So it's kind of fun. The home learning student codes are exactly what it sounds like. It is a QR code that is individualized to the student where they can log in on their personal device at home and they only see items that are theirs or their teacher has shared with them. So as opposed to logging in with a shared QR code where the student can see everybody's stuff, because it's all on a shared QR code. It's all the same QR code. It is an individualized code just for that student so that they see only their things, their journal entries, and anything the teacher has tagged them in. So as we're working from home, that might be something to think about, but it's definitely not necessary right off the bat. Student likes and comments. This is definitely an area I suggest you take a look at. Sometimes student likes, especially with the older students, can become popularity contests. So I like to leave the default and leave it off. With enabling student comments and requiring approval, those two are defaulted together, because if you're going to enable student comments, you definitely want to require your approval of them. So they can comment, but you get to say whether or not that comment gets posted or not. So that would be something I would definitely leave. Keeping on going down, students can or cannot see each other's work. Again, that is up to you, and as the teacher, you know your class better than anybody. New items require approval. Absolutely. You want to leave this on. What that means is that every time a student posts something, it will come to you for approval before it becomes public, before whoever is connected to that account can see it. So if you have students being able to see each other's work, once you approve that item, everyone will be able to see it, including that student's family. So you definitely want to leave this on so that you can catch anything that maybe wasn't done correctly or needs a little bit of tweaking before it gets sent out to the general viewing public. Item editing. This is kind of a newer feature that's really exciting, because this was something that you weren't necessarily able to do even a year ago. You can send an item back and have the student edit it. Previously, they would have to make a copy of the item, edit that, and then they would have duplicates, and it was just all sorts of crazy. So now you can actually send them back their item or their journal entry, have them fix it, and then they only have one journal entry. It's editing. Wonderful thing, if only Twitter would get on board with. A sample student is a wonderful thing to leave enable, just because then you have a student that you can play around with within your main class. So you can send them assignments, you can send them activities, and then you can see what it looks like on the student side. So that's a great feature to leave enabled, but if it's something that confuses you, it's a quick click to turn off. So absolutely up to you. So then when we come down here to the family settings, enable family access. This is that button I clicked on earlier that said enable family access. Again, if you have Seesaw for Schools, this may not be an option for you as far as turning it off. It might already be turned on and it might be grayed out, so you can't even change that. To invite families, this is going to take me to that same screen I was at before. So this would be the same thing as clicking on that invite or add families gray button at the bottom. I'm going to get back into my wrench over here. So it's the same screen, just two different ways to access it. Manage families is going to look a lot like your manage students. It's going to, let's say that you get an email from Abby's mom that she got married over the weekend and she wants stepdad to be included. You could come in here to Abby. You can invite families, and it's going to probably take you, back to that same screen. So just another way of, again, getting to the same place from multiple different avenues. Pending family approvals. So there are, when a parent or a family member connects to a student, you have to approve that connection. So let's say that you get a connection from a student and you're thinking, never heard that name before. Then you might want to reach out to that parent or that family member and say, hey, how did you get this link? Can you just remind me who you are? Especially if they're not showing up on any of the paperwork, you might want to either reach out to them or reach out to an admin or both. Family likes, comments, and sharings. Again, this is completely up to you as a teacher. Family sharing, I will say, as a mom who has kiddos in Seesaw classrooms, and I use the family side of things as well as the teacher side of things, the family sharing, if I turn this off, what that does in my experience is it means I cannot share or download that item. So it's kind of counterintuitive. So that's definitely something you want to be careful of. If you want parents to be able to download, share, save photos, anything like that, you probably want to leave that on. Enabling family likes, again, is up to you. It's a little heart that shows up at the bottom of a post that families can click on, and that's kind of the like button. It just depends on how you have things set up as far as whether or not you think students would react well or not so well to that. And then family comments is the same as student comments. If you're going to enable family comments, I highly, highly, highly suggest that you leave it as requiring approval, just because you never know what Siri is going to come up with. So coming back into the settings, the class blog is definitely useful, but it's not anything that you need to do right off the bat. It's just another way of communicating with your parents. And if you already have a Google site set up or some kind of a classroom site, this isn't necessarily necessary. This isn't something that would be beneficial any more so than the classroom website would be. So totally up to you. If you do not already have a classroom website and you want to use this as a way to get information to your families, go for it. Folders, again, not necessary, but helpful if you are somebody who wants to organize things. Became very helpful during remote learning as we were getting multiple teachers in classrooms, because what you can do with folders is create a folder for each teacher. So let's say I am a preschool teacher, but I also work with an SLP. I also work with the counselor. I also work with the music teacher and various other teachers. And let's say that they're all connected to my one classroom. I can create a folder for Mrs. Smith's preschool. And I'm going to leave that one red and check. I can create another folder for Mr. I don't know why the name Dittmer is sticking in my head. Mr. Dittmer's PE. And anything that they turn in for PE is going to go into that folder. And what this does is it gives students a folder to submit things to. So as a teacher, I can go in here and I can say, okay, my job is to approve and comment back on anything in my folder. Mr. Dittmer's job is to approve and give feedback on anything in his folder. If we wanted to give our SLP, we'll say Mrs. Frizz, Ms. Frizz, SLP. We can put a check mark there, and the only students putting things in there would be the students who work with Mrs. Frizz's SLP, SLP curriculum. So folders are certainly helpful if you have multiple teachers or if you are teaching multiple areas. You could do a folder for social studies, a folder for math, a folder for science. Very, very helpful, but again, not completely necessary. So if you are somebody who likes to do folders, great. If you are somebody who that would just be confusing for, not a big deal, don't worry about it. So if you want other teachers to have show add to folder step, that's the default. So only teachers can add folders. If you want to have students and teachers see that add to folder step, so as they're submitting, students and teachers can both add it to a folder. So let's say if you are expecting as a teacher for students to put feedback or journal entries into specific areas, you're going to want to have this turned on as opposed to being just teachers. So add to folder step is a step that they will see as they are submitting a journal entry. And then as I'm coming down here, skills are, again, something that's kind of newer. You can manage skills the same way as you would a folder, but I believe if I try and add a new skill, it's going to tell me, yep, it's only for our upgraded friends. So those of us who have either paid for the individual version or are in Seesaw for Schools. And then you can choose, so you can add skills the same way you would. You can choose a rating scale. So do you want to rate, out of 5, out of 6, out of 3? And then your color scheme is exactly what it looks like. As the student is getting 1s, this is the color that you'll see on that skill. If they're getting 2s, this is the color. If they're getting 3s, if they're getting 4s. We haven't really used that one a lot, but if you are somebody who has access to that and that would be very helpful for you, absolutely go through and explore and play with that and see how it works for you. So save to camera roll, this is just an option. And you can see right there, it's going to tell me, make sure that the student devices have given Seesaw permission to access the camera roll. So when the student devices try to log into Seesaw for the first time, they're going to have to give permission to both the camera and the microphone. And if you want them to be able to save their journal entries in Seesaw to the camera roll on their iOS devices, there's a third permission that you have to make sure is turned on. So just make sure that you make a copy of that or take a screenshot of that warning so that when you get students in front of you, you can actually help them turn that setting to on. And then the video quality, you probably don't want to mess with because this is set to be the best quality you can get with the fastest upload as far as what people are comfortable with. Now, if you were ever to want to archive your class, meaning you're going to put it on the back burner, you're not going to use it anymore, you're tired of looking at it, this would be a great place to do so. Avoid clicking on this red button because all that does is create havoc and pandemonium with your families and your class. So just avoid that red button at all costs. So the next thing we're going to take a look at is when you add something to the journal. So this add button is how students are going to add things to their journals and how you're going to add things to their journals as well. So you can post work for students, you can assign an activity, or you can send an announcement through that plus button. And as you can see, I'm getting little pop-ups because it thinks that I've never used Seesaw before. So as you're going through, don't feel bad. Go ahead and click on those pop-ups and see if it will kind of help you. And it looks like as I'm clicking on them, yep, it's just kind of giving me a little, so there's nothing to click on besides what I was actually hovering over. Just giving me a quick little info about that, whatever that option I was hovering over was. So if I'm going to post to student journals, these are my options. I've got photo, obviously I can take a photo, I could do a drawing, I can take a video, I can send them a link, I can send them a written note, or I can upload a file. But right now I'm going to stick with drawing. And let's just say I wanted to kind of get to know my students. So I want them, we're going to do a little activity where I'm going to choose, or I'm going to draw the first half of something and they have to try and draw the second half. So I'm just going to draw kind of scribbles, doop. I'm going to change my colors, I'm going to change my size, and I'm kind of just drawing a little nonsense. I can use my pencil, which is just a kind of different shading, a different look. I can use my pen, or my marker is what I call it with the kiddos. I can use my highlighter and I can highlight certain sections. Whee! I can use my, I think this is my spray paint. Yep, that's my spray paint. My daughter loves this one because it makes everything fun and shiny. And then of course I can use my eraser. Whee! And I'm gonna erase that. Now the one thing I wanna point out to kiddos before we even get started is this undo button. That is their best friend. Oh, and it's back to where I wanted it. So besides my drawing tools down here, I have a whole bunch of other options. I can add text, so I can add labels. I can record myself. I can add pictures, and I can also add shapes and a background. So there's lots of different things I can play with here. Feel free to play around, add yourself a label, add some shapes, put a fun background in there because you know the kids are going to. They're going to explore all of this and try and find what's going to be the most fun for them. You can also come over here and you can add pages. So I could add another page if I wanted to, and I'm surprised, yep. If I want to add more pages, again, it's going to ask me to be a paid member. So that is something that is for our subscriptions. I can save it as a draft, I think. Nope, save as draft is also one of those upgrades. So if I wanted to send it to students and have them fill out the rest of my wonky picture here, I'm going to click on that check mark. And I can choose which students to send it to. So I'm going to say all, because we're going to do this as a class. And I'm going to click on check. And I don't need it to be in any folders. I don't need it to be in a skill. So I'm just going to not click on anything there. And I'm going to click on the check mark. And now each student should see that item in their journal. And so what they're going to do is when I come in as, the first day we're going to have, this is kind of going to be our opening activity. I would have them click on this item. I would have them click on edit item. And then they can go in here and they can finish my drawing and then click on that check mark. And we're just going to do a real quick sweep, heart. I want to do another heart down here. And I'm going to do some symmetry, and we're going to call that good. And I'm going to click on my check mark. And now my sample student has updated or edited that particular journal entry. Nice and fun. The other things I can do up here are assign activity and send an announcement. And that kind of goes along with my activities tab and my inbox tab. So if I click on journals, it's going to show me exactly that, my journals for my students. If I click on activities, it's going to take me to the activity library, and we'll go back to that in just a second. And then my inbox is how I can communicate or send announcements to parents. Now I will give a brief caveat on this one. If you are sending home announcements to families, unless you have a paid version, it is not archived. So if you don't have the subscribed version, there is no archival retrieval, which doesn't necessarily meet school board policy for every school district in the area or in the state. So make sure that you know what the policy is on communication between teachers and families before you start communicating with this. Simply because we would hate for anybody to get in trouble for not archiving messages back and forth. Most of the time I just see teachers using it for things like, hey, don't forget we have a field trip tomorrow. We all know how it is trying to get in contact with a parent or a family any way we absolutely can. So just make sure that if you are communicating with parents this way, that you know that that's acceptable in your district. So going back to activities, there is this awesome thing called the activity library. So I'm going to click right here, and it's going to take me to the activity library, which is a community library of activities that I can send to my students. So getting started with Seesaw activities are wonderful to start with. So if you didn't want to do a journal entry to start with, you could anytime come in here and click on one of these. And see, it's giving me kind of this little prompt. If you want to see more, click on the activity to see the individual details. And take a look. This is a fun little activity that even has a teacher note so that you can kind of follow along. It's got, sometimes there are ties to standards. If you are interested in what standards it's meeting. Sometimes there are verbal instructions and written instructions. But the one thing you're going to want to know from here is to click on this little heart to like it. And then as you can see, activity 1, describe yourself, has been saved to my library. So now when I go into my library, the tab up here, there is my activity number 1. So this is a really nice feature because it takes what can be sometimes overwhelming amount of activities and it allows you to save just the ones you want to use. So if I want to go in here and I say, remote learning, that'd be a good idea. This is a great place to start looking through and planning for the fall. So as we come into these activities, this is a place where you can be looking for standards that match units that you need for the fall. And the nice thing about these remote learning activities is that they can happen at home, or they can happen as a small group in your classroom, or they can happen as an individual in your classroom. There's some really, really great things that you can do with these activities, either at home or at school. So we've got some awesome options here. We've got book review, share a favorite family memory. This is probably one of my favorite activities. And as you can see, there's a lot of people that like it because you can see there's over 25,000 teachers who have liked it and saved that one to their library. Most magnificent thing is, again, a favorite of mine. So I'm going to like those two. I'm going to click on the heart, 1 and 2. And now I've got 3 activities. I feel pretty ready for that, that first day, maybe that first week. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to pretend like I'm assigning these activities to my kiddos. So let's say I want to assign this activity, that describe yourself, to everyone. So I'm going to click on assign. And I'm going to leave this checked, this box checked. If I didn't want to assign it to everybody, I could come over here and edit that. But for right now, I'm just going to leave it. I'm going to assign to one class. Again, if I schedule is a paid version option. So if you have that, woohoo. If you don't, you can just assign it. And then it'll say activity assigned. So the students will come in after they sign in, they will respond. But again, we have kind of made up students in our test class, so probably no one's going to be responding. Let's take a look at this favorite family memory. Now, let's say that, oh, this is great. However, I want to record my own instructions. So what you can do is come down here to these three dots, and you can say copy and edit activity. Aha, now I can delete the recording. I could add voice instructions of my own because I want my kiddos to hear my voice, and then I can save. And now I have a copy of this saved without the recording in it. Now, obviously, there's a lot of other things I could edit as well, but this is just a real quick overview of the activities themselves. So I go back to my library, and I have two versions of this now. So to figure out which one is mine, I look for which one has my name under it, because that means I am the author. So as I'm looking for it, it's not going to say copy of like Google does. You just have to look for the version that has your name under it. So just something good to know. So then I click on assign. I can also go into the activity and assign it from there. And this time, I don't want to send it to everybody. I want to send it to, I'm going to go through and I'm going to choose. And I'm going to say I want to send it to Aiden and Megan and Susie and let's say Bobby. But I know that Abby and David are going to be gone that day, so I don't need to send it to them because I don't want them to be worried about getting work done while they're homesick. I can also go into folders, and let's say that I wanted my counselors or my PE teacher for whatever reason to see this. I can add these to his folder and my folder. If I had skills, I could click on them there. I could select them there, and then I can say submit. It's going to take me back and say, are you sure? And I'm going to say, yes, assigned to one class. And so now I have two activities assigned in my test class. So I can come back in here and I can take a look, and here are my two activities. So as a student, if I click on add response, I'm going to choose to be my sample student. And I'm going to view instructions. I would take a photo, tap the label and type in adjectives, and then tap the check to add it to my journal. So I'm not going to do that right now just because I don't want to waste that time, but it would be super simple to just click on view instructions, follow those instructions, and then they've got something quiet that they can be sharing about themselves while they're working on an activity to learn a new platform and learn how to share about themselves and some adjectives. Now, the last thing I want to show you that would be super useful to be doing over the summer is if you go into assign activity, click the plus button, go into assign activity, you can share or create activities. So I certainly don't suggest trying to create an activity right away. As a matter of fact, I myself don't create activities. I usually look in the community library and use ones from there, because there are just so many wonderful activities in here. The only reason that I would not use something in here is if it is because it takes students somewhere where my district doesn't allow them to go, either a tool they're not allowed to use at that age or a website they're not allowed to access. And in that case, I wouldn't necessarily not use the activity. I would simply click on the heart to add it to my library, open the activity. I would come down here to those three dots, and I would click on copy and edit activity. And then I would go in and I would change whatever the offensive website or tool is that to whatever it is we do expect kiddos to be able to use. The other option down here that I wanted to share with you is share activity. So if you are working as a group or as a PLC, this is a wonderful way to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So you can get the activity link is what I usually do, because what that does is I copy the link, and then I can go into my email and I can say here, I can say I'm sending it to Julie, and I say here's the link, and I paste. And now when I send it, Julie has access to that exact activity and can save it to her own library. So that's kind of a nice thing, because then you guys can all be working on the same activity at the same time, even if you're not all teachers in each other's classes. So that's kind of a workaround for those of us who don't have the paid version. That's a great way to make sure that the kiddos are all getting the same experience without all having to be teachers in the same class. So if I go back to my class right up here, any response is going to show up kind of underneath. When I click on this icon for my activity, you're going to see blank spots for the students who it's been assigned to, but they have not completed yet. And you'll see completed spots after I click on my activity. You will see completed spots, or a thumbnail of the activities that are done. So you'll be able to click on it and pull it up. You do still have to approve of the responses, because basically what they're doing is when they add a response, they are adding a journal entry that just happens to be tied to that activity. So it is still a journal entry. You will still need to approve it, but it's definitely also going to show up in your activities section. So as far as the summer goes, I would go in, I would create your test class. I would add some students in there. And then I would just start playing around with adding journal entries, creating activities, finding activities, saving them, and really getting to know that activity library and that journal inside and out, so that you can be helping students as they start getting to know it next year. So I really hope that this was helpful, and let me know if you have any questions, and I will do my best to get you some answers, whether or not it's from me or from the Seesaw Hive Mind. But I hope this was helpful, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your summer, and happy seesawing.